has been described as Kenya's darkest hour. But those few words come nowhere near describing what unfolded in the country called Kenya shortly after people cast their votes on 27th December 2007. I was on the ground covering every second and every minute of that terrible period in the history of our country, Kenya. It is all captured in my book titled Let the Blood Flow. I have never in my life written anything like this before. And I pray to Almighty God that I will never again be required to write anything close to what I wrote in this book.
Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga is therefore the winner and the fourth president of the Republic of Kenya.
The Commission therefore declares Honorable Mwai Kibaki as the President of Kenya.
The legislator for Bahati in Nakuru, is serving his second term, and yet many Kenyans did not know him. That was until recently, when he has burst into the limelight rather dramatically. In this kind of scenario, there is a lot that Kenyans don't know about Bwana Ngunjiri. But let me deal with the biggest misconception, and this is going to shock most of you. Kimani Ngunjiri has massive support from the Kikuyu community, from the House of Mumbi.
I'm a beneficiary of the handshake. Since 2007, the only part of Kisumu I could venture into is Kisumu Airport. Thanks to the handshake, I can now freely walk in the streets of Kisumu. Kisumu is one of my strongholds.
Now, very interesting at the press conference, which is not like Moses Kuria, he read a written statement, which raised the question, in fact this question was someone on social media, did he write the statement or did somebody write the statement for him? Which I think is a valid question. Honorable Kuria is also usually very accommodating to the press. But today, he rudely refused to repeat the highlights of his statement for the sake of the Kikuyu vernacular stations. He replied rudely, so that you can go and misquote me, you have Kikuyu translators in your newsroom. And the truth of the matter is that his body language clearly showed this is a man who was shaken. Now, before I analyze this further politically, there's some information that you need to have. There is an ongoing investigation into the disappearance of millions of shillings, hundreds of millions of shillings, in the Gatundu South CDF fund. That's the Constituency Development Fund, where MPs have a major role. This investigation was triggered by a petition filed by voters from this constituency, where they wrote to the EACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the DCI, Director of Criminal Investigations, and the Auditor General, seeking to establish under what circumstances tenders worth hundreds of millions in the constituency were awarded to people who seem to be very close to the sitting MP, Bwana Kuria. Very, very interesting.
keki tule. Kata. Thank you.
This man Odinga, he did it well by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Raila had refused to eat. He was on a hunger strike. He grew thin and pale. His right palm had gone dark. The arm had pimples and boils as well. He was receiving extraordinary punishment. He stood for his words. Dictators had to go. Moi had to go. Had been initially jailed for a year by the Kenyatta regime for criticizing the government acts on my book, Gahika Deda, meaning I will marry when I want. I had set up a revolutionary theater. This provoked the dictatorial regime. I was jailed for a year. Odinga's was involving. 7 years already in jail. He kept his words. Kenya needed a fresh air. He was willing to pay the price. I felt touched by his story. When I came to see him, he was denied a chance to talk to me. However, he wisely did it in writing. Tell Ida to ask the doctor to prescribe me these drugs. I'm slowly dying. Soon, his mother died. His other relatives, including his aunt, followed. He would never be allowed to attend any of the burials. It was painful. It was real torture. He remained in detention without trial. The government would not allow it. Soon he was transferred to Committee Maximum Prison. He was taken to the torture corner, the isolation block, the detention camp, a prison within a prison. Here, he was daily served with half-cooked ugali, with vegetable water, with a few limp leaves floating around. And for the first time in 2 weeks, he was served with the food. The blows to his head dazed him. He fell on the floor and lay there. Rono, a GSU officer, and others jumped from his head to his genitals. His left leg twisted and was confirmed broken. He was either going to speak the truth or become dead meat. He waited for the end, but it did not come. And I was very lucky because I had the pleasure of meeting her here under the most, shall I say, strange, bizarre circumstances. I met her in 1985 at the tail end of her great political career. And I was very young in those days. I just completed school, high school, and I was still trying to find myself. I was a very heavy drinker. Now, one of my favorite joints was a place not very far from where I lived at the time, and it was called the GVC Club, Green Valley Club. Now, this club at the time, there were not many in Nairobi. This club attracted people from every corner of Nairobi. The gathering there was what we used to call in those days mchanganyiko maalum. Loose translation, a mixture of everything. From the richest to the poorest to the middle income, to politicians, to nobodies, to people like Chris who had just left school, etc., etc. And I walked in one day and sat at the counter. Now, in those days, there were not too many conmen or people with evil intentions, and therefore, it was very common to just start a conversation. And so this very heavily built woman who was seated on the stool next to me started a conversation, and we talked for quite a while. And I told her I had absolutely zero interest in Kenyan politics. Of course, at the time, I was very closely following American politics. Kwani America ilikuwa mama yangu. Anyway, she seemed to be very knowledgeable on Kenyan politics. And also, she was talking about Kenyan politics in a different way. Very late in that conversation, we introduced each other. And she said, "My name is Chelagat Mutai." And I laughed. That was a very funny joke. Because everybody in Kenya knew who Chelagat Mutai was. Even people who were following American politics. She would often be referred to as Yule Mwanamuke Mwanaume. Loose translation, the woman who is a man. She had defied the Moi regime, which was nothing, because the worst Moi would do to you would be to put you in detention without trial. What had really gotten her reputation is that she had defied the Kiambu Mafia and the murderous government of Jomo Kenyatta. Because Jomo Kenyatta's preferred way of dealing with opponents to the government or nuisances to the government was the 6 feet under method. Yeah, you'd end up dead. But this was a woman who stood up to Jomo Kenyatta. Yes, she had fully earned her name of Mwanamke Mwanaume. She had done what the vast majority of men, even from her native Nandi, where they were real men, would do. And so after quite a bit of convincing that day at the GVC club, I finally realized that I was seated right next to one of the most important Kenyan political figures of this century.